Mr. Hayward,
now has
a lady brought this from your office. She's being searched.
Miss Johnson? No exceptions, Mr. Hayward. Now, you agreed. Okay. You guys mind if I go in there and make a few private phone calls?
Imagine a detective show so iconic, its very style shaped a genre. Yet it hides an episode no one was meant to see. What happens when a script is deemed too dark, too complex, or too unsettling for TV? One lost Columbo episode, written amid industry strikes and creative turmoil, vanished despite its daring storytelling. This mystery isn't mere censorship. It reflects deeper artistic conflict and a struggle over the show's identity. Could this unseen installment have redefined Columbo forever? Or was it too dangerous even for a series famed for breaking the rules? The Lost Script's dark impact. In 1973, a script arrived at NBC that shook the core of the Columbo series unlike anything before. This episode pitched America's favorite detective against a slayer who lacked a conventional motive. No greed, no revenge, just pure unsettling evil. The network's reaction was immediate and severe. Fear gripped the executives, and the script didn't just get rejected. It was locked away, hidden from production and public view. Official explanations pointed to the story being too dark, or the audience not ready for such content. But beneath these surface excuses lurked a more complicated and disturbing reason, tied to what the show represented and the risks this story posed to its identity. For years, speculation surrounded this forbidden episode. Why would a series celebrated for its psychological twists suddenly bury a script that seemed tailor-made for its style? The show had always flipped the crime genre on its head by revealing the culprit early and focusing on the detective's clever unraveling of the case. Yet this script pushed boundaries in ways that unsettled not just the network, but possibly the creators themselves. Its portrayal of senseless evil threatened the careful balance Columbo maintained between intrigue and a comfortable, almost cozy, Sunday night atmosphere. The mystery of this episode extends beyond censorship. It reflects the tension between innovation and tradition in television storytelling. Columbo was known for its calm, polite approach, where clever questions and small details cracked the case. This lost script, however, introduced a raw darkness that challenged the very formula viewers had come to expect. It was not just a question of taste, but of whether an audience accustomed to a particular type of justice could accept a character who defied explanation and motive. Yet, while the episode disappeared from the production schedule, its story and themes whispered through the decades, influencing discussions among fans and critics. It served as a symbol of what Columbo could have been under different circumstances. A bolder, bleaker vision of crime and consequence. The tension surrounding it also hints at the challenges faced by creators trying to push forward without alienating their audience or losing network support. Even without ever being broadcast, the script's shadow loomed over the show's history. It represented a crossroads where the gentle art of Columbo collided unexpectedly with darkness too raw to handle. This unmade episode remains a fascinating piece of television lore precisely because it dared to go places the show's usual episodes would not. Its suppression suggests there was much more at stake than simply a bad story or poor timing. What happened to the narrative that portrayed evil without reason? How did it come from the mind of notable filmmakers and slip through the cracks, only to vanish? These questions open a door to a deeper understanding of the struggles behind one of TV's most beloved detectives, and set the stage for revealing the true story hidden behind the taboo script. The answer lies in the complex origins of Columbo himself, a character born from equally unusual beginnings. As we untangle this mystery, it's essential to look back at how Columbo was originally created, and why his unique character stood apart from other detectives on television, setting the foundation for everything that followed. Origins of the Columbo character. Columbo's origins trace back to the early 1960s, during a writer's strike that brought Hollywood to a near halt. Richard Levinson and William Link, two struggling screenwriters, stumbled upon an unexpected loophole. Live television was not subject to the strike's restrictions. Seizing the opportunity, they wrote a rushed, last-minute homicide mystery titled Enough Rope to pitch to NBC's new live color program, The Chevy Mystery Show. While it was a desperate effort, the script introduced something remarkable. A detective unlike any other. The character was initially called Lieutenant Columbo, though the spelling and details evolved over time. Levinson and Link had drawn inspiration from Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, particularly the figure of Porfiry Petrovich, a soft-spoken but brilliant detective who combined seeming harmlessness with deep psychological insight. This idea of a gentle, unassuming investigator who uses politeness as a weapon became central to Columbo's essence. Unlike flashy heroes, Columbo thrived on subtlety and persistence. The concept that was shown to the audience at the very beginning of the story was a radical one that did not stick to traditional crime dramas of the time. The slayer's identity was no longer the main source of suspense, and the story turned into a psychological battle between the detective and the truth, as the latter would slowly reveal himself. The writer obviously aimed for the audience to become engaged with the character and method, rather than being surprised by the ending. Peter Falk did not make Columbo's first official on-screen appearance. Bert Freed was the one who played the part in a live broadcast on July 31, 1960. Freed's interpretation was calm and observant, which was a foundation, but at the same time, it lacked the funny and charming traits that would later be associated with the character. The following year, the story was turned into a drama, Prescription, Homicide, and Thomas Mitchell was chosen for the role. It was a successful production, but it never got to Broadway. Mitchell's performance was very humane, but sadly, it would be the last one before his death. In 1968, NBC finally made the television movie Prescription, Homicide, and decided on Falk as the actor who would make Columbo immortal. Falk was not the first contender, though. The part was turned down by Lee J. Cobb as well as Bing Crosby. Still, Falk's subtle and at times ambiguous performance captivated the audience while still dealing with the detective story's darkness, thus breaking the stereotypes that the audience had formed about the genre. By the time the new adaptation came around, Columbo's personality was clear-cut, but the weathered image of the iconic potato bag-like raincoat started to emerge. In an amusing twist, Falk's raincoat was not a film set prop, but actually a personal purchase made in a downfall during the New York. It was bought for only $15 from a high-end Spanish manufacturer. The coat that was supposed for the movie soon became inseparable from Columbo's image. Falk's decision to bring his own clothes, including shoes and even his car, really vouched for the character's authenticity, making him feel more real rather than a polished TV creation. This casual, lived-in appearance was in stark contrast with the rich suspects Columbo chased after. Falk's revolutionary method of acting was beyond his looks. He not only recites the words but also imposes mental games on the other actors. He would sometimes improvise in the middle of the scene and distract the actors who were not accustomed to his method. Thus, he would get the true feelings of irritation and nervousness, which would create the realism of the show even more. The audience got so involved in these little tricks that they felt partners, sharing in Columbo's subtle maneuvering instead of being just passive watchers. Just one more thing. One of Columbo's hallmark moments was indeed a product of need rather than intent. It saved a scene that was too short. and the detective just came back and casually threw the line.
Oh, Mr. Jarvis, just one more thing, please.
I thought you had a...
What was initially a convenient fix turned out to be a line that was always associated with an indication that the Slayer's unraveling was on the way. This little gesture, through improvisation, was indeed an apt portrayal of Columbo, humble yet assertive. The quiet strength of Columbo and the subtle brilliance behind his character cue up a fascinating chapter in television history. The rise of Peter Falk as Columbo himself. Peter Falk's definitive portrayal. Peter Falk's entry into the world of Columbo marked a turning point for the character and the show alike. Less a polished leading man and more a man of quirks and contradictions, Falk infused Columbo with a unique blend of scruffy charm and sharp intellect. He wasn't just playing a role, he was embodying a character who seemed both vulnerable and invincible, a man underestimated by everyone he met. This approach transformed Columbo from a minor figure into a television icon. Falk's insistence on authenticity extended far beyond his famous raincoat. He often brought his own clothes to the set, selecting shoes and suits that matched Columbo's lived-in, unpretentious style. The beat-up old Peugeot he drove wasn't just a prop, it was his own choice, helping to deepen the character's grounded, everyman quality. These personal contributions blurred the line between actor and role, making Columbo feel like a real person rather than a scripted detective. On set, Falk was known for his improvisational skills and mind games. He would deliberately break character, stumble over lines, or pull out irrelevant objects like a shopping list instead of evidence. These tactics unsettled guest actors, who were sometimes unaware of the ruse, resulting in authentic expressions of confusion and irritation. The effect was electric, adding layers of unpredictability and tension that kept both actors and viewers on edge. His casual, sometimes distracted demeanor masked a razor-sharp mind. Falk played Columbo as a master of observation, using polite questions and everyday logic to tease out contradictions and crack the case. This slow-burning style replaced the typical action-packed detective chase with a battle of wits, showcasing intelligence over intimidation. It was a refreshing departure from television norms and one that resonated widely. The style of Columbo's speech, his mumbling, scattered thoughts, and meandering lines, was carefully crafted rather than accidental. Falk's performance made the detective seem disarming, a man who appeared to fumble but always had a plan. It created a compelling dynamic where audiences could never quite tell if he was genuinely absent-minded or deliberately manipulating the situation. Falk's iconic catchphrase became a hallmark of the show and a moment viewers anticipated. Though created out of a rushed rewrite, Falk's delivery elevated it into a suspenseful signal that critical evidence or insight was about to surface. That phrase often spelled doom for the suspect, wrapping up the subtle psychological game Columbo expertly played. Falk's dedication to his craft was legendary. He was known to refuse rushing through scenes, stretching 10-day shoots to 2 weeks to perfect a moment or rework a line. Producers and executives learned quickly not to push him, recognizing that his attention to detail defined the quality of the show. Falk was not merely an actor. He was the driving force behind Columbo's enduring appeal. As the detective's origins and definitive portrayal took shape, so too did the show's revolutionary storytelling method, which would challenge traditional crime dramas in unexpected ways. The show's unconventional structure. What truly set Columbo apart from other detective shows was its groundbreaking narrative style. Unlike traditional mysteries that keep the audience guessing who committed the crime until the final moments, Columbo flipped the script. The viewers saw the slayer right from the start, often witnessing the death unfold in chilling detail. This unconventional approach transformed the suspense into a psychological game, where anticipation hinged on how the detective would piece together the truth, rather than on discovering the perpetrator's identity. This how catch 'em formula was daring for its time. Most television dramas relied on surprise endings, but Columbo asked viewers to engage differently, focusing on the slow unraveling of carefully laid plans. Lieutenant Columbo's method was subtle and cerebral. He didn't rush into dramatic confrontations or car chases. Instead, he quietly observed minute details, like a smudge on a wine glass or an oddly set thermostat, turning these everyday clues into the keys that unlocked the mystery. The show also challenged audience expectations about heroes in primetime television. Columbo wasn't rich or glamorous. He smoked cheap cigars, wore a worn-out raincoat, and drove a beat-up car. His humble demeanor masked a keen intelligence and relentless determination. This contrast created a dynamic where viewers rooted for an underdog against wealthy suspects, CEOs, actors, surgeons, who assumed their status would shield them from consequences. Columbo's insightful interrogation sometimes disconcerted the suspects by bringing their thinking about being untouchable to the surface. He effortlessly talked about costly artworks, or likened things to those of his invisible wife, indirectly using psychological pressure to point out the weaknesses in their narratives. This very issue of class and social standing was largely responsible for the dramatic power of the show to depict justice as a great leveler that reduced the status of the affluent and made the proud come to terms with their downfall. The show's pacing was very slow on purpose, letting tension build up slowly instead of quickly. The deaths were often shown at the beginning of the episodes, and then the viewer would see the investigation in great detail, with every tiny detail counted. The writers got as much as 90 minutes per episode from the mystery movie rotation format of NBC, thus making the boundary between television and movie more porous. This time allowed the characters to be more human-like, and the story arcs to be more complex and not feel hurried or cliched. Initially, the networks were apprehensive about this slow-burning style. Over the top, executives were thinking that the audience would not be patient enough to wait for the detective to come on screen after 30 minutes, and thus, they might change the channel. However, the creators Richard Levinson and William Link did not give up their ground and continued to stand against the fold of the traditional rules of television storytelling. The risk they took paid off, as the viewers accepted Columbo's rhythm differently, and the ratings soon began to rise steadily. The success of this formula was also the has of guest stars who enjoyed playing the complex, often charming, villains. Jack Cassidy, William Shatner, and Patrick McGoohan were some actors who, with their charisma and depth, made the storytelling better. The interaction between Columbo's simplicity and the Slayer's pride generated the winning personalities that made the show a trend for years. This storytelling innovation changed the detective genre's face, curing people of the idea that it was always about mystery or action, but it was about patience, insight, and quiet persistence. Columbo's slow and steady method gave the viewers a close-up look inside the head of a persistent detective who didn't use violence or tricks. He, however, uncovered lies and deceit in a gentle and considerate manner. The strange thing was that the network executives did not always stand behind the show's unusual cuts, and sometimes tried to apply changes, fearing that the show was going too far from the usual formats. The opposition that made Columbo's preferred identity would soon put to the test everyone's determination who had been part of the production. Even as Columbo's unique style flourished, cracks began to form around the edges of its formula. Creative conflicts, Behind the scenes. Behind Columbo's polished exterior, creative tensions simmered between the network, producers, and the cast. After only a few episodes aired, NBC executives pushed for changes, anxious that the show's slow pacing and late detective entrance risked losing viewers. They wanted Columbo to appear earlier and favored a more traditional homicide mystery structure with quicker reveals. These demands clashed directly with the vision of creators Richard Levinson, William Link, and star Peter Falk. Levinson and Link, supported by producer William Furman, refused to compromise on the show's heart. They believed that Columbo's charm and suspense rested precisely on its unhurried build-up and emphasis on psychological cat-and-mouse games. Peter Falk, fiercely protective of his role, also stood his ground, aware that altering the tone or format might erode the character's authenticity. It was a standoff that could have ended the show before it truly began. The creative team's defiance was a significant gamble. NBC had made it clear that if they didn't adapt, the show risked cancellation. But the gamble paid off, as audiences soon embraced Columbo's distinct style. With ratings climbing, executives were forced to relent and allow the series to continue as originally intended. The show was granted longer time slots and a prestigious Sunday night rotation, cementing its place as a prime-time fixture. Casting decisions also sparked tension behind the scenes. Guest stars carried major episodes, and the search for compelling villains was intense. Producers considered legendary actors such as Orson Welles and Peter Sellers for roles. However, Sellers' salary demands made casting impossible. Peter Falk himself exercised considerable control, famously vetoing Danny Kaye without explanation. Falk's insistence on maintaining the show's tone and quality revealed how intertwined his vision was with the overall production. The writers faced unique challenges developing scripts under this complex format. Unlike typical homicide mysteries, Columbo episodes revealed the slayer up front, forcing writers to construct plots backward and build sustained tension without relying on a surprise ending. This demand made the writing process exhausting, and initially, few writers were eager to join the team. The creative pressure fostered a high-stress environment where problem-solving and continuous brainstorming became the norm. Even as tensions occasionally flared, the collective dedication to preserving Columbo's style showcased a shared belief in what made the show special. This unity behind the scenes became essential in protecting it from network pressures to dilute its innovation. The creators' commitment ensured that Columbo remained a thoughtfully paced, character-driven drama rather than a run-of-the-mill crime procedural. Occasionally, the network attempted to steer the content toward more conventional stories, but the production team's resilience kept the show's spirit intact. The commitment of everyone involved, from Levinson and Link to Falk and Furman, forged a rare environment where artistic integrity outweighed commercial convenience. This battle for creative control was crucial in shaping Columbo's legacy, allowing it to stand out as a slow-burning, psychologically rich mystery series. It also set the stage for future clashes, like the one involving the mysterious 1973 script that never aired, revealing how fragile the balance between innovation and acceptance could be. When innovation meets resistance, the outcome is never certain, and in Columbo's case, this tension would take its toll in unexpected ways. The controversial 1973 script. In the summer of 1973, something unusual surfaced in Hollywood. A script for Columbo unlike any before. Brian De Palma, a rising director known for his darker, Hitchcock-inspired style, penned an episode that broke away from the show's familiar formula. Collaborating with film critic Jay Cox, De Palma crafted a story featuring a filmmaker named Quentin Lee, who homicides a talk show host without any conventional motive, just pure malevolence. This villain's actions challenged the basic premise of Columbo, as he sought to prove that a crime without reason could be the perfect crime. De Palma and Cox even adopted playful pseudonyms to submit their work, borrowing the name Joseph P. Gillis from Sunset Boulevard for Cox. The script was layered and experimental, including meta-elements like filming Columbo himself without his knowledge, and featuring 3 film students trailing the detective, one named Spielberg, an obvious nod to the director who had already worked on the show. The episode was not just a mystery, it was a dark commentary on art, media, and the nature of evil, pushing boundaries far beyond the cozy, psychological puzzle viewers expected. Still, time was not in De Palma's favor. The writer's strike had caused the production schedule to be very tight, and the show was in dire need of the scripts that could be shot under pressure easily. Another submission, titled Double Exposure, was a quicker option with a villain who committed homicide using subliminal imagery, a concept that was easier to edit and was more in line with the show's atmosphere. Though producers liked De Palma's intricate script and even used some of its ideas in subsequent episodes, they finally turned it down, saying that the great complexity and resources needed were the reasons. The stark mood of De Palma's script also conflicted with the tone of Columbo that had already been established. The slayers, whose motivations were greed, revenge, or personal gain, typically played the main part in the plot of the episode. These were characters who were deeply rooted in recognizable human wants. De Palma's anti-hero, on the other hand, was not in the least bit concerned about money or vengeance. He chose to slay as an artistic expression, a cold, calculated experiment. This change was a gamble that might lead to losing the viewers who sought to find the same moral clarity and emotional involvement in the narratives of the show as always. Moreover, the casting raised eyebrows. John Lithgow was considered for the lead role of Quentin Lee, but he had a tall, powerful look that was regarded as incompatible with the small-screen era and audience expectations. His stardom might have swallowed the subtlety of Columbo's style. These practical and tonal considerations were the main reasons for the cancellation of the episode, as the creators opted for stability rather than radical change. This lost script, aside from production and creative disputes, provides an interesting what-if scenario for the series. It demonstrates the potential darkness and philosophic depth of the Columbo character. Depth that, at the time of airing, and perhaps still today, would be too much for the television audiences to handle. The refusal was not just about one story. It was more a declaration regarding the creativity restrictions imposed on the use of the beloved format. The works of De Palma remain a subtle but profound legacy, despite their absence from the screen. The character of a film student named Steven Spielberg, for instance, is one of the elements that were mirrored in the later episodes, such as Mind Over Mayhem. The reference suggested the presence of the forbidden script underground, as if the creators of the show were giving a silent tribute to what could have been. Still, the absence of the episode erected a boundary line. On one side were Columbo's experimental possibilities, and on the other, the safe formula guaranteeing the show's success. This shelving was a crucial moment, where the show's core was preserved, but not without a price, a closing of the door to a truly thought-provoking and disturbing tale. It was obvious that the producers were looking for a very low drift from the formula that made the show a success. This was a decision that would control the future, for better or for worse, and would illustrate the balancing act between the creativity of the producer and the audience's expectations. Even as some episodes later experimented with style, the spirit of the forbidden 1973 script remained out of reach, a ghostly reminder of Columbo's untapped potential. Some years later, however, the series would attempt departures from its classic formula with mixed results, signaling shifts that not all fans embraced. Later, experimentation and decline. As Columbo entered its revival era in the late 1980s, it began drifting from the understated precision that defined its golden years. Some episodes embraced theatricality and experimental storytelling that divided fans. The 1989 episode Smoke and Shadows featured a flashy young film director villain and exaggerated set pieces, including a 10-minute waterbed scene and a bombastic finale with police in costume and spotlights. A far cry from the quiet, cerebral tension that once made the show great. By 2003, Columbo Likes the Nightlife attempted to modernize the detective for a new era. Set amid neon-lit clubs and pounding techno music, it placed the aging sleuth in outlandish scenarios, wearing a feather boa and retrieving a clue from a toilet. Though some appreciated the attempt to keep Columbo relevant, many felt the essence of the character was lost in the noise. Behind the scenes, Peter Falk faced increasing challenges. His earlier directorial effort had been plagued by production issues and studio disputes, leaving him reluctant to direct again. Decades later, plans for a final episode, Columbo's Last Case, a modern mystery centered on sound technology, were scrapped when ABC rejected the project over Falk's age. Efforts by Universal to secure international backing failed, and the idea was shelved permanently. Falk's declining health soon made any revival impossible. Diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in the late 2000s, he gradually lost his memory and recognition of loved ones. He passed away in 2011 at age 83, closing the book on one of television's most beloved characters. Yet Columbo endures. Rediscovered by younger audiences through streaming, its unhurried pace and anti-elitist spirit resonate anew. Fans celebrate the detective's quirks, intelligence, and moral clarity. Proof that while the show's later years stumbled, its heart remains timeless. Columbo's evolution and decline reveal the enduring challenge of innovation within legacy television. How to move forward without losing the quiet brilliance that made it unforgettable. The story of Columbo's forbidden episode remains a striking reminder of this ongoing tension. The unmade final episode and legacy. In 2007, Universal Studios quietly planned Columbo's Last Case, a farewell episode originally titled Hear No Evil. Peter Falk, nearing 80, was eager to give the rumpled detective a fitting send-off. The completed 100-page script centered on a high-tech slayer involving sound, a modern twist on the show's signature psychological depth. Subtle clues, like a faint clicking noise, echoed Columbo's sharp attention to detail. Larry King was set to cameo, adding nostalgic charm reminiscent of past celebrity appearances. Despite its promise, ABC declined to produce the film, citing Falk's age and doubts about audience reception. Universal sought international backing, but without U.S. support, the project stalled. Tragically, Falk's health declined soon after. By 2008, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and the final episode was never filmed. He passed away in 2011 at 83, closing a remarkable era in television history. Though unfinished, Columbo's legacy only grew. Streaming revived the series between 2020 and 2023, drawing a new generation captivated by its slow-burn storytelling and quiet justice. Fans around the world embraced Falk's humble, relentless detective, an underdog who outwitted the powerful with empathy and wit. Columbo endures not just as a TV icon, but as a symbol of intellect, humor, and humanity. The unmade finale remains a poignant reminder of what might have been. A story too perfect to film, yet forever alive in the imagination of those who still hear just one more thing. Columbo's story is one of brilliance, shadowed by mystery and loss. From a hidden episode too dark for its time to an unmade farewell lost to age and illness. His legacy endures through unforgettable storytelling and an iconic performance that redefined television detective shows. If you enjoyed uncovering the secrets behind Columbo, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more fascinating deep dives into classic television legends.